Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the second installment of our Yiush Mida'as classes. We're learning again, just to have a look on top of the page, we're learning Bright Eilu Mitziyus. That's the second Perik Sheni in Baba Mitziyah. Baba Mitziyah is the name of the Masechta, and Eilu Mitziyus is the name of the Perik. Masechta is like a book. Eilu Mitziyus is equivalent of a chapter, and it says Perik Sheni, chapter 2. Now, we're doing Shiur Zayin. The reason that's so is because the first 6 Shiurim we're learning about lost objects and how wide they have to be spread apart. But now we're starting a new topic. Okay, so we're going to go through the text. I'm just encouraging you to try to keep up. Ask if you have any questions, because it's a little bit difficult to keep track of the bouncing ball here, of following the logic. Okay, so we're gonna read from Rabbi Spivak's text, and let's go. Okay, so here the sugya that we're starting, sugya is a topic, is very famous, like many famous sugyas, like many famous topics. It has a name, and it's called Yiush Shelo Mida'as. So it's Yiush. Yiush means giving up. Shelo Mida'as. Now it doesn't, without knowledge. So it doesn't really mean the way it sounds. Yiush Shelo Mida'as. If you translate the words literally, it's Yiush, giving up. Shelo, they didn't. Das, have knowledge. So it's similar to what it really means, but that's how we call the topic, and we're going to refer to that in the Gemara. And we'll see exactly what that means. We'll certainly get to that today. Okay, we'll explain what that means shortly. So it's a classic sugya with a lot of shaklavataria, with a lot of questions and answers, and the sugya will be a great opportunity to learn many new Gemara skills and become more comfortable with shaklavataria. Shaklavataria is back and forth. So we say in English, just if we were doing a regular example, a shaklavataria would sound something like, well, what are you doing tonight? And I would say, well, I'm going to the park. And you would say, well, do you have any equipment? I say, no. Well, if you don't have equipment, how could you play? So that's a conversation that we have with each other. So when we say this term, shaklavataria, it's Aramaic, it means back and forth. So think of like a ping pong game or a tennis game. So you hit the ball over to the other person hits it back to you. This back and forth, so we had a conversation. What are you doing tonight? Do you have equipment, right? So you asked the question, a she'elas birer, a question, looking for information. We answered back, that I'm going to play. Do you have equipment? No. So that is a conversation. We call that shaklavataria. Okay, and it's going to be your first experience with a long sugya. In a long sugya, it's important to make sure that you understand the basics very well. Otherwise, you might find it difficult to understand the rest of the sugya that you'll be learning for quite some time. So we're going to spend some time now to become clear with the fundamental ideas needed for the sugya topic of Yiush Shelo Mida'as. We'll explain what that means soon. Now, in the first year, yesterday, we did lesson 9, which is about the concept of Yiush. And let's refresh. This was from yesterday's shiur number 1 in Yiush Shelo Mida'as. That was really an introduction. Okay, so the thing that determines whether or not a person may keep the mitziyah, a mitziyah is a lost object. It comes from the word matzah, to find. It really goes on the person who's finding it, right? And aveda is the other end of it. That means the person who lost it. The person the one who has the shaila, the one who has the question, whether or not he should keep it, is the finder. Okay, so usually we refer to it from his end. It's a mitziyah because he found it and he has a question what to do with it. Giving up hope is known as yiush. That's when a person says, you know what, I'm never going to get this back again. And when a person has given up hope, we say he was miyayish. Now you'll find in Gemara, if you look at this technically, we just zoom in a little bit. If you see the nekudos here, if you look at these punctuation, it says miyayish, And you'll find very often, not very often, but sometimes, and more than once or twice, the Gemara is going to, it'll be punctuated in a way that's not exactly the way people say it. So we use the term miyayish. Long story for how it got that way, but don't get disoriented if you hear people saying it a little bit differently. Okay? So if the owner has been miyayish on his aveda, if the owner gave up hope of finding back his lost object, now you see, now, remember before we called it a mitzia, going by the person who found it, but for the person who lost it, it sure isn't a mitzia, he wants it back. He lost it. Aveda is to lose something. Before the other person has even found it, the finder may keep it. So what that means is, excuse me, what that means is, if I lose something and then I realize that it's lost and give up hope and say, oh boy, I'm not going to get this back again, then it becomes what we call hefker. Anybody can take it, and the person who finds it may keep it. If, however, when the finder, finds the object, the owner still has hope of getting it back. He was not miyayish. Okay, here in this case, if somebody absolutely says, no, I'm getting this back, the finder has to announce so the owner can claim it. Okay, now, so far, we're given two choices. Either you're miyayish, person gave up hope, or he's not miyayish. So once the person is miyayish, again, remember the word yiush means a lost object. Okay, yiush means a lost object. And once a person is miyayish, that's a verb, he gives up hope, then the finder can keep it. So now, when it comes to yiush, it seems that there's only two possibilities. Okay, one possibility is either the owner still hopes to get back his object. Okay, that's choice number one. The owner wants it back, he was not miyayish, or, I'm gonna do it too, okay, or he has decided that there's no hope of getting it back. That's a pretty sorry little two here. I'm gonna make it worse. Okay, or he has decided there's no hope of getting it back and he was miyayish. However, there's one possibility, and this is where it gets a little complicated. And this is the focus of our new sugya, new topic. In order to understand this, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna scroll down and look at the great illustration that we made. You'll see so many of these throughout Yiush Mida'as, and as you learn it, I hope you'll appreciate the tremendous amount of work that went into it, and we did it like this because it's a little abstract, meaning it's not right in front of you. You're thinking conceptually about something. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to do than if you see it in front of you. So this is just a visual way of laying this out to you. We probably have 20, 30 of these throughout the sugya of Yiush Mida'as. Okay, now, so here's what we see. Again, it's 1 p.m., 12 p.m. The time goes this way. Okay, time goes from here, from noontime until 5 p.m. And here, the fella here lost his snack. You see, he was opening his bag and his corn chips fell to the ground. Now, he didn't realize that it's lost. Okay, now another fellow, the fellow with the blue sweater, comes and picks it up. At this point, it's an aveda. And the owner, right, the same fellow here who owned it, comes on the way back home on the bus, looks into his bag, and he sees, lo and behold, his corn chips are gone. Now, here is the question. So the question is, if this story on the bus would have happened before the guy picked it up, it wouldn't even be a question. Okay, because the guy dropped it. The guy was miyayish, he gave up hope, the owner. So now the finder can keep it. What happens if he wasn't there? What happens if he didn't know that he lost it? So he didn't get a chance to be miyayish. Okay, so we ask, what the real question is, do we say that since we know that people will be miyayish when something like this happens, because there is no siman, there's no marking. Yesterday we talked about a special marking on something that would make it more likely to be found. In other words, let's say his mother made 3 cookies there. that was the bag, maybe he would have a better hope of getting it back because he could identify it. And the person who found it would know that this wasn't just some random person, it's somebody who could identify it. But if a person is miyayish, then if he gives up hope, then the question in this case is, can a person be miyayish? Can a person give up hope without knowing about it? Do we say, well, if he would have known, he surely would have given up hope and he could keep it? Or do we say, no, you can't keep it because it had to, when he picked it up when it belonged to somebody. So now it's too late and he has to announce it. Okay, so I wanted to do the picture before the words. So now let's go back and look at it inside. So when it comes to Yiush, it seems that there's only two possibilities, right? There's only two possibilities. There's only two. One second, please. Okay, so it seems that by Yiush, there's only two possibilities. One was that either the owner still hopes to get it back, it means he wasn't miyayish, or he decided there's no hope of getting it back and was miyayish. However, there's another possibility. This will be the focus of our new sugya, and that's why it's called Yiush Shelo Mida'as. In order to understand that other possibility, consider the following example, and now Rabbi is going to write in words what we had here in pictures. So imagine you went on a trip, you packed your knapsack with food, in your knapsack you had a sandwich, 3 drinks, and 4 snacks. Wow, lucky guy. Whenever you were hungry, you reached into your knapsack and pulled out something to eat. Towards the end of the trip, you knew that you still had one snack. You hadn't eaten yet, your bag of favorite corn chips. However, when you reached into your knapsack, that's over here, right? At the end of the story, right here on the bus, right? While you're riding in the bus, you realize that it's empty. You look at the knapsack, you saw you left the zipper open and your corn chips fell out. As it turns out, the chips fell out of the knapsack 3 hours earlier at 1 p.m., right? At this time, in the picture, right, while you were eating lunch, and it was a crowded park. An hour after that, someone walked by. This guy, the finder, comes by and finds your chips. So here's the question. It's unclear what the halacha should be. On the one hand, at the moment that the finder found your bag of chips, you were not yet miyayish. In other words, he found something that belongs to you, to the one who lost it. Why? Because you had the owner. Let's talk you. Imagine you're the person who lost it. Okay, so you weren't miyayish yet. So he picked up something that belongs to you. So even when you are miyayish, the action of changing hands happened already, and he took it at a time where he shouldn't have. Okay, you didn't even know that you lost it. How could you possibly have been miyayish, right? So this is the opinion that says that he has to return it to you, to the one who lost it, is because how could he possibly have been miyayish? He didn't even know about it. On the other hand, if at the time the finder found the bag of chips, would have known it was lost, he would have been miyayish. After all, it'd be safe to assume that in an hour in a crowded park, someone else would have found it. And since it was a bag, remember we said before, since it was a bag of ordinary chips, it was an ordinary bag of chips that did not have a siman, a marking. If he would have written his name on it, if his mother or he would have written his name on it, Yankees, this belongs to Yankee or Yankee, then, or my initials, like you're in YH would be mine, yours or whatever yours are. So if it had a marking, then the guy would have a better chance of having it back. But again, it was an ordinary bag of potato chips. It wasn't cookies that your mother made, and it didn't have a siman. So even if the finder had announced what he had found, there'd be no way for you to prove that it's yours. Therefore, he wouldn't give it back, and you would have been miyayish. Okay, so cases like this are called Yiush Shelo Mida'as. Yiush Shelo Mida'as without knowledge. It literally means, see, this is the thing. I mentioned earlier that it's not a literal translation. Here it means giving up hope without knowledge, but that's not, you can't give up hope if you don't have knowledge, right? It means, would you have given up hope had you known about it? What it really means is that the owner would have given up hope. However, he wasn't actually miyayish because he didn't know that the object was lost. He was on the bus, and when he got on that bus, he still didn't know that it was lost, actually, when the person picked it up. So the Gemara will discuss what the halach is in this situation. One more time, let's get a last look at this before we go to the Gemara. So the Gemara is talking about a situation. The Gemara poses a question: what happens if someone picks up, someone loses an object, still unknown to him. He did not know that the owner lost it. The finder picks it up while he still is not aware, and he opens the bag and finds out later. Does that later Yiush make it able for the other person, to the finder, to keep it? So we're going to have what we call a machlekes. A machlekes is when you have two opinions about the same thing. Okay, so let's get to the words of the Gemara. This is where the whole sugya of Yiush Mida'as goes, and it's a whole lot of Shiurim. So buckle up. Let's enjoy this. So itmar, it was said. The word itmar here is often used to start a sugya. It's usually followed by a machlekes, an argument between Amoraim. Amoraim were the people, the Chachamim, the wise people who were around at the time of the Mishnah. So that's the case here as well. So itmar, let's go back to the translation. Itmar, it was said, Yiush Shelo Mida'as, you know what that means by now, giving up hope without knowledge, and that what it really means is that the object is missing. He didn't know that the object is missing. So Abaya Amar, we're going to become very familiar with these names, these two names. Abaya Amar, Abaya says, Loi have a Yiush. It's not Yiush. Meaning, let's go to the translation. It is not. You got a lot of those brackets again mean what somebody would whisper in your ear, because the context is not clear what it means. So when Rabbi did the translation, so it's not considered that the owner is miyayish, giving up hope, and therefore the finder may not keep it. So this is the whisper, what I call, as I mentioned earlier, somebody's telling you in your ear what words are missing here. So again, itmar, it was said, Yiush Shelo Mida'as, if you had Yiush without knowing about it, meaning you would have been miyayish, you would have given up hope if you didn't know, if you weren't there. Abaya says, Loi have a Yiush. It is not Yiush, because he says it's not, but we know what he says. He doesn't say the explanation here, but he's going to say, well, you didn't fight, you didn't give up. You want to give up on something, that's an action. So if he didn't take that action and he didn't give up hope, so the finder can't keep it. Okay? V'Rava Amar, and Rava says, have a Yiush. It is Yiush. Rava says it absolutely is Yiush. So Rava said it is considered that the owner is giving up hope and the finder may keep it. Okay? Let's review this again. Itmar, it was said, Yiush Shelo Mida'as. What happens if you, back in this case, the person was miyayish when he realized he lost it, but at the time, at 2 o'clock in the park, he was not miyayish. So Itmar will ask, Yiush Shelo Mida'as. He had Yiush later. At this point, it would have been Yiush if he would have known. So Yiush Shelo Mida'as. Abaya Amar, Abaya says, Loi have a Yiush, it was not Yiush. V'Rava Amar have a Yiush. And Rava says, it is Yiush. Okay? So the Gemara has told us, let's just read what Rabbi wrote here. The Gemara has told us the two shitas, the two opinions. In the following Shiurim, the Gemara will begin to discuss and debate this interesting topic. Okay? So we're just going to, let's see, read and translate. We just did that. Itmar, we learned Yiush Shelo Mida'as. Oh, let's do the commas. We did that before. So Itmar, we learned. This is like a pause, or Yiush Shelo Mida'as. We'll put commas and punctuation to help. Let's see if we know where to stop. So Yiush Shelo Mida'as, pause. What is the ruling of Yiush Shelo Mida'as? Abaya Amar, Abaya says, maybe you could put a little comma here. Loi have a Yiush, I would say not. So you would pause a little bit. Abaya says it is not Yiush. V'Rava Amar, and Rava says, have a Yiush, it is Yiush. Okay? So far we just have a step, right? And this step, we had different markings for statements, right? So this is important here. So this, if you remember, we went through the steps. If you didn't get it, so please go back and refer to it. In the Hachana L'Gemara, if you're watching YouTube the videos, so it's the second video of the introduction to Gemara. We went through the different steps, and this is called a memra, a statement. I guess similar to the word Amar. You can see some of the root words there, the letters. So a memra is a statement. This is not a question. It's not a proof. It's not an answer. It's just a statement. Okay, that's what Rabbi was asking here. Just identify what kind of step this is, and let's go on. Okay, we're just going to get a little bit started here. Okay, I got to get, okay, this was really an edit here. Okay, so the steps of the sugya, this step of the sugya is a memra. It's a statement. Usually, a memra begins a new sugya and is not a comment on something said before. However, this memra does not discuss the previous memra. We call it a memra. Why do we call it a memra? Again, a memra is a statement, and it is pretty unusual in the Gemara that the Gemara follows one statement with another, because usually after a statement, somebody contests it and argues with it or something. I'm sorry, this version has the translation sheets in the wrong place. So this is an editing, so you'll excuse me. Tomorrow, Shia will make sure we get a better copy. Okay, so we call it a memra because it doesn't ask, answer, prove, or disprove anything. A statement clarifies what we said in step one. I'll review this again tomorrow when we get there. Now, this chart is an important chart. I'm going to explain this, and then we'll call it a day for this year. And this chart we're going to have many, many times throughout this sugya of Yiush Mida'as. And there's really three possibilities, okay? And we'll go through them briefly, explain them, and we'll get more into it when we get there. Now, there are some things, let's do this chart in three parts. So this is part number one. Abaye and Rava agree that it is considered Yiush. There are some times that Abaye and Rava agree, they don't argue because it's obvious that it's considered Yiush. We'll see what some of those examples are. I'm sorry, over here in the missing space, it would say Abaye and Rava agree that it's not considered Yiush. Something, for example, let's say something that has a siman in it, a sign, or in a more private place. Think about it like that. Abaye and Rava would agree that it's Yiush if somebody lost something in the middle of a huge busy street with no siman on it, right? So they would both agree it's Yiush, especially if the person knew. And then we have some cases that are going to be the focus of this Gemara, and Abaye and Rava are constantly going to go back and forth trying to prove that their opinion is right. Okay, so as we're ending it today, Abaye and Rava, there are some cases that they agree that it is Yiush. They have some cases where they say it's not Yiush. And in between, there are some cases where they say that it's considered Yiush. Let's very quickly go over the Gemara again. We started with the general idea about this topic of Yiush Mida'as. This will have a lot of shakla. We said back and forth, right? What are you doing tonight? I'm playing ball. Do you have equipment? No. A back and forth like that. Now, even a kasha on that statement would be, yeah, but I see you have in your car, you do have equipment, right? So that would be a kasha on what I said. So this is our first experience with it. It's called Yiush Mida'as. A mitziyah is something that's found, and a veda is something that's lost. Obviously, it's the same thing. It just depends what side of the table you're on. And if a person gave up hope, he's miyayish, and then it's free for anyone to take. If he's, then the finder may keep it. If the person was miyayish, and if not, he can't. Now, this topic we're going to have, there's two possibilities. Either he hopes to get it back and he won't be miyayish, or he said he has no hope of getting it back and is miyayish. So this sugya will talk about a case like this, where he dropped it, did not know, so he didn't get a chance to be miyayish. If the fellow picked it up before he knew about it, and now by the time he finds out about it, it's too late, he was actually miyayish. Okay, and now the Gemara says, Itmar, we learned, Yiush Shalom Midas, what is the halacha, what is the law with Yiush it didn't actually happen, but would have happened. Abaya or Malay have a Yiush. Abaya says, no, that's not Yiush. Yiush is an action, and he has to take it. Rava Amar have a Yiush. Rava says it is Yiush, and we're going to get, in Yirtzeh Hashem, we're going to continue B'li Neder in Shiur 3. Okay, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.